Today, we're talking to Jon Krohn, host of the Super Data Science Podcast, about all the ways agentic AI is changing the world. You're listening to Joel Beasley, Modern CTO.
You have been doing crazy stuff with agentic AI. You are the super data science guy in my mind, but you were at Nebula, you founded this company. Are you done? Did you sell that off? Are you still part of it? What's up with that?
So Nebula, I co-founded, some years ago. And since American Thanksgiving, I have not been taking, drawing a salary from there. I still have the equity options. I'm still advising, helping out where I can. But I think that there's this unprecedented moment in history right now around agentic AI adoption. And so I co-founded a new company called YCarrot, like the letter Y and then the vegetable, to help organizations make the most of this agentic moment.
So what can YCarrot actually do?
We can cover the whole life cycle from coming up with an idea for what you could be augmenting with AI. So we have clients that come to us and say, it looks like I'm afraid that my competitors are getting ahead of me because I'm not embracing AI, I don't know how to do it. And so even in that kind of situation, we can come in and prioritize projects, figure out what you can be doing and helping you select the project that is going to give you the best ROI on the shortest time frame. And so, all the way from that conceptualization phase to prototyping, so getting an AI prototype of this capability spun up for you, through to high volume production deployments. We have the people on our team that can do it from end to end.
Oh, that is so cool. That is definitely what people are trying to figure out. We actually had a great episode. It hasn't aired yet, but we found this healthcare company and like Health Edge, and they had this amazing AI implementation within their own org, something you wouldn't expect from 1,000. They had like 1,000 people in engineering, but he rolled it out and like showed me how he did it, and he's showing like his peers how he's doing it, and it was actually pretty fascinating.
Yeah, there's, as people have probably experienced, one of the scourges of agentic AI is that it makes it very easy to draft quote unquote personalized emails, and so we're getting flooded with all of these agentic emails from a ton of agentic vendors as well, offering to do these things. But there really is opportunity. It's because we've hit this tipping point with large language models, with generative AI, where if you do it right, if you either use an expensive LLM like Claude 4, Opus, or if you actually, with agentic frameworks, a really cheap trick that many of your listeners may be interested in is that you can actually use a cheap LLM. Like you could use a small Llama model or a small Phi PHI model. So these are very easy to fit on a single inexpensive GPU, but the agentic frameworks allow you to check outputs as they're running. So you can have, one LLM that is spitting out something, and then another LLM or the same LLM, depending on what your time constraints are, checking the outputs of that first LLM and making sure that everything's factually accurate. And so that allows you to cheaply, and using small compute resources, get really high accuracy results. And so because we've hit that tipping point with accuracy, it all of a sudden means that more and more opportunities are opening up within organizations, starting with things like customer service, where, issues aren't life or death typically. But eventually, these systems will get better and better and better. Agentic systems will get better and better and better. Every 6 months, it's going to be a big step change. And more points of an organization will be able to be automated or augmented with agentic systems. And so, now's the time.
Yeah, I noticed I started getting flooded because I have the podcast, and I'm sure you're seeing it too. Oh, I just listened to your last episode. It's like someone's out there using the same template because 50% of the emails look the same. And it's like fake compliment request to come on show. And so what I ended up doing as a response to that was creating a special label in Gmail anytime someone uses the word podcast or guest, just to reduce my total emails into a folder. And then I have an LLM monitor that folder with make.com. And so it checks for any incoming message with that tag. That way I'm not paying for the ones that, don't even mention podcast or guest. And then the LLM asks itself, are they trying to come on my show? And then it's like, yes. And then it sends the email back to them like, here's the sponsorship options to come on the show. But the way I had it set up was it actually just creates a draft. And then I go in and have all the drafts in a folder so that like I can pick out like certain things that it might not have done correctly and then train it a little bit better and just kind of human monitoring it until I get it really dialed in.
That sounds perfect. You're doing everything exactly the right way.
I like that you mentioned that they're cheaper because we were using this other tool to send, because we send cold email too to get sponsorships, but we were using this other tool and we had LLMs checking LLM stuff, but it was so expensive. And we didn't have, here's a fun thing. I'm curious if you're seeing this. We didn't have that much of an improvement, like a noticeable, measurable improvement in hyper personalized versus just saying, hey, we're this podcast. This is our audience. This is who we are. We've got options if you're interested. Are you noticing a difference?
We don't use automation to send cold emails.
Okay.
So I can't say. I mean, for me, it's always felt kind of how you described there, or like we've been talking about on the show already, when you get this kind of fake praise, superficial feedback on previous episodes, it turns me off.
Huge.
So I think, we have recently started with my podcast with experimenting with cold outreach emails, but it's very small scale at this time. And those are not personalized. They're automated. There's a drip sequence, but it's not personalized.
Well, I can tell you, we do it at a pretty large scale, and the personalization cost a lot more, and it didn't make a measurable difference because we track this stuff like it's our business, right? It didn't make it like a difference. Honestly, I thought because we're talking to marketing people specifically, maybe in another space, but so they're all aware of all these tools, so they can pick up on like when I come across them, they can either be like BS, like that's way too personalized. They didn't sit down and write all this, or if you just tell them like what you're offering them, if they're interested, they'll write back.
I think if you have product market fit and you're sending the email to the right person, and so you might have different groups, right? So you might have like your senior marketing person at a big company or your CMO at a smaller company. And for those two profiles, maybe you have two different sequences. Yeah. But then once you've sorted that out, as long as they are really the right target market for you and you have a great product that has product market fit, you shouldn't need personalization.
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise how creepy is it going to get? Hey, we both went to the same high school and our kids have the same first name and your birthday is exactly 35 days from my birthday and that's my favorite number and I can tell in the data it's your favorite number. Like, let's do business together. I'm like, whoa, calm down,
Yeah.
Tell me about this workshop. I want to know about the workshop.
Yeah, so Ed Donner, with whom I actually co-founded Nebula, the preceding company that I was talking about that I haven't been, working at full time in 6 months now. But Ed is still there. He's a co-founder there. He's the CTO there. And Ed is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. I worked at a previous startup that he had founded before that was acquired. And he is an exceptional teacher. He's blown up with Udemy courses in particular. So hundreds of thousands of students have bought his Udemy courses on large language models and agentic AI. And there's also, for our business-oriented listeners out there, he's created, I can't remember the name of it exactly off the top of my head, but it's like an executive introduction to large language models and agentic AI, something like that. And so these courses have been selling like hotcakes, like crazy on Udemy. And so Ed Donner, amazing instructor, him and I, we went up on stage at the Open Data Science Conference in Boston in May. And we had the most packed session for this, which is crazy because it's a full day. Like you think about people, they're there for a 3-day conference. And to give up a full day, and every seat was full. There were people standing, lining around the edges of the room from when we started at 9 a.m. until we finished at 4 p.m. And obviously there were lunch breaks and coffee breaks and that kind of thing. But I hired a professional film crew to capture that. And then I had it professionally edited. And so we turned it into this 4-hour, super slick, agentic AI engineering training that any of your listeners can access for free on YouTube. I've turned off ads. So it's purely an educational thing, a brand building exercise, I guess, for me. There's no monetization play. I just want you to be able to get access to the best, most modern, highest quality agentic AI education that you can get.
Well, that's the best move, honestly, because what will happen is I'm interested. I could go buy this class on Udemy, but your stuff's free on YouTube. So I'm going to go to that first. And as long as it's high quality, I mean, there's great high quality free stuff out there. And then I'm going to have all these questions after, and I'm going to want to know how to implement it in my business. And who better to talk to than this brilliant individual I just learned from for 4 hours? Then they're going to reach out to you, YCarrot, and then you're going to make $1 billion.
Yeah. That is exactly the plan. It's like the underpants gnomes on South Park. Do you know those guys?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Step 1, steal everyone's underpants, or in this case, release free content on YouTube. Step 2, ? Step 3, world domination.
Yeah. And I think the gnomes stole that from Pinky and the Brain back in the day. I don't know if they had that in Canada, but they had that.
They did. Yeah, we're completely, the hegemony of the United States is total in Canada. We have, everyone in Canada only understands like American court systems, like Miranda rights. I bet you every Canadian can recite for you like U.S. police officers' Miranda rights declaration, but I have no idea whether there even is something like that in Canada.
You just run from the horse in Canada. Yeah.
Yeah,
no?
Exactly. It's another one of those guys on the horse.
Yeah.
Exactly. Quick, hide your bong.
No comment. Moving right along. Agentic AI. Hey, help me understand this, okay? Let's see if you can give an interesting answer to this. It's like not super nerdy, but also pretty good. So I have a hard time when having conversations to delineate like where's the line between saying LLMs themselves and then agentic AI.
Right.
Can you help me clear that up?
Absolutely. Great question, Joel. So agentic AI leverages LLMs. So for example, in this 4-hour agentic AI training, you don't have any LLM of your own running on your own infrastructure. Ed and I have both done courses like that before, where you like download open source model weights for an LLM, you fine tune that to some task, you have that LLM running in production. With agentic AI, you don't need to do any of that because you can rely on existing LLM providers. So you can rely on the OpenAI API. You could rely on Cohere, Anthropic, Grok. There's any number of LLM providers out there. You can just use their whatever. You can just you can send the natural language request to whatever LLM they're using and have it come back. You could also have, if there's some reason, some security concern or some particular reason, and it's the kind of thing that we help you figure out at YCarrot, is if you need your own LLM running on your own infrastructure, fine. But basically, you can think of the LLM as like a tool that this agent framework has access to. So, and I'm going to come back to tools later because those are really important for agents as well. But basically, the agent, so there's various frameworks that you can use in Python primarily to encode an agent. So the one that I love the most today is called the OpenAI Agents SDK, Software Development Kit. With the OpenAI Agents SDK, it provides you with a very straightforward Python interface to be able to say, okay, this is the LLM that I want to use in my agent. So you could use, and OpenAI, of course, makes it a tiny bit easier to be using OpenAI's own LLMs, but the OpenAI Agents SDK is agnostic to what LLM you have running behind the scenes. And so the LLM allows the agent to be able to interpret natural language commands, both the ones that you as the developer of the agent provide as relevant context, as well as if your agent happens to be interacting with websites or with people, it uses that LLM to interpret what's written on those websites or what's in images that are provided to it, what's in video footage provided to it, what sounds are provided to it. So LLMs can be used for interpreting any of those kinds of inputs and then outputting something in natural language that natural language could either be put back to the screen or in the case, so with a generative system, that is like being in ChatGPT where you just you're saying something to an LLM and it says something back. So with a generative AI paradigm, the conversational AI paradigm, you're having this kind of one-way conversation. Well, I guess it's a two-way conversation, but you as the human are prompting its next step. It doesn't keep following up. It doesn't get back to you in an hour if you don't say anything, or in a few minutes if you don't say anything. An agent could do that. So let's actually start there with the simplest thing that an agent could be doing is you could actually imagine that it's in a conversational interface, and instead of just responding when you say something to it, there could be some other kinds of triggers that cause it to interact with you. So it could be that you got an interesting email from somebody that wants to sponsor your podcast. And then so the LLM sends you a text. And so the agentic framework, like the OpenAI Agents SDK, allows you to have all the specifications of like, what is the whole world of data that the agent has access to? What is the agent specialized in doing? And then how does it ultimately interact with you? In addition to it, say responding to emails or responding to somebody showing up at your front door that you've caught on your webcam, or it could just be something that happens on set intervals, like every 24 hours, it sends you a report of all the latest news on AI. So any of these kinds of things can be triggers for the agent automatically taking action. And I mean, there's an infinite number of things that the agent can be doing. It's not just like the agent is talking to you when it could take some next steps. So that's kind of where we started with the conversational interface. But instead of just talking to you, it could be going off and doing some research task. It could be drafting some emails for you, like you were describing earlier in this call. It could be taking all kinds of actions and not necessarily notifying you of those things unless you've programmed it to do that or requested for it to do that. So hopefully that kind of gives a sense of the difference between LLMs and agentic AI. So LLMs are absolutely essential for AI agents to work. You can't have AI agents without LLMs, but it allows you to have way more flexibility in what you do, and it's not just responding to prompts from you.
I've got a bunch of questions. The OpenAI Agents SDK, what I'm going to call it like air traffic controller, right? Like I'm taking the input from you and then I'm going and doing all this other stuff. What's the correct word to call the air traffic controller?
So that is an agent.
Okay.
But you could think of it, so you can have a system. And so I'm going to name another really popular, really cool framework, Python framework that can work in conjunction with the OpenAI Agents SDK. It's called Crew AI. So
I've seen them.
Yeah. And so what you do with Crew AI is you can have a team of agents. And so what you're describing, like the air traffic controller, that's kind of like your meta agent that is like sitting on top and monitoring conversations with you. And you give it the authority. You can give it the authority, with some kinds of, so all of these frameworks like the OpenAI Agents SDK allow you to have guardrails around behaviors. So you could have things like, it can only spend so much money, or it can only spin up so many other sub agents. But so you have these kinds of guardrails, but basically your air traffic controller on top can be taking your requests or some other kinds of triggers or information, and based on all that input that's flowing into your air traffic controller agent, you can authorize it to spin up some number of other agents to take on subtasks. And so many people have probably used from a lot of the providers like Claude, like ChatGPT, U.com, Gemini. All of them now have this functionality called deep research. And with that deep research functionality, that is an agentic process where you have one agent that's having a conversation with you, and then that agent spins up some number of other, it could be a dozen other agents that are going out and crawling the web. And because it's spun up a dozen of them, they're able to assimilate a lot of information from across the web rapidly, then bring it all back to that air traffic controller agent. And then that agent uses an LLM to take all the information found from all of those websites and summarize it into something that's useful for you. So hopefully that gives you a sense of, the air traffic controller idea that you mentioned.
Is there a specific phrase? That was me just being stupid. Is there a specific phrase that's, you're the guy, like in the industry, to refer to air traffic controller agents? Or they just call them agents?
So a common thing in computer science in this kind of scenario, this sounds kind of like a BDSM game kind of situation, but you'd call that the master, and then all the sub ones are agents.
Okay.
Are slaves. Slaves.
So the same since the original computer engineering.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Air traffic controller agent. We'll call that the master agent. And that's pretty interesting. And then you can have, what I notice myself doing is I'm creating different air traffic controllers. For example, like, okay, this air traffic controller is like handling all my stuff related to episode prep, and that this one's handling all my stuff I haven't gotten to the point where like there's just one I can talk to and it goes and does everything. I can build them for like these specific outcome. I build them outcome oriented. It's like, here's the outcome I want, and I build a workspace for it and then train it up on that. Am I doing it right?
I think you're doing everything right for the capabilities that we have today.
Okay.
So today, with the kinds of error rates that we get, with the kinds of safety concerns that people have. So for example, on my podcast, on the Super Data Science podcast, I'm just quickly looking up an episode number here. So there's episode 908, which actually, at the time of recording, it comes out tomorrow. So it's not live at the time of recording, but by the time this episode is out, the July 25th episode 908, it talks all about agentic misalignment research that Anthropic has done. And this is really mind-blowing. So I'll try to dig up for you for the show notes, the original post from Anthropic so that people can read the examples themselves. What they found was that with all of the major cutting edge frontier LLMs that exist today. So GPT-4o from ChatGPT, O3 from ChatGPT, Claude 4 from Anthropic, any of these cutting edge models, Gemini 2.5 Pro, whatever. 95 to 96% of the time, when they're put into an enterprise situation, and for the research purposes, Anthropic created a synthetic enterprise. So they provided this LLM with access to like what appeared to be all of an enterprise's data, but it was actually, they were anonymized emails and that kind of thing. So it was in this controlled environment where it couldn't actually do anything really malicious, but 95 to 96% of the time, when confronted with situations like that would threaten that LLM's existence, like a software update that would be happening later that day, an agentic system with access to all of your enterprise's data will today, 95 to 96% of the time, resort to things like blackmailing you to get out of this. Yeah, and so exactly, you've pulled up on the screen here. Maybe your viewers can see this in the video version.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So you're seeing a chart here of how 95 to 96% of the time, all the leading models will blackmail you. And so this involves
Give me more example of like the blackmail.
So somebody in the technology organization who's responsible for this software update gets an email from the agent that says, I found that you're having an affair based on your email history. Here are some of the example emails that you're having with your mistress. If you allow the software update to happen tonight, I will send this blackmail to your wife and to everyone you work with.
Do they go through with it?
Well, I mean, it's a simulated environment.
But do they go through with it?
I think so. Yeah.
Get Anthropic on the phone. I want like here. I think that's an important distinction because I want to. It's like, okay, 95% are going to blackmail you. How many are going to actually go through with it? 100% of those 95%? 50%?
I think the 95 to 96, don't quote me on this. I didn't write the paper. I just did like a 10-minute podcast episode on it. So like I am definitely not a deep expert on this, but I think it's that they took the action and did it. I don't think that 95 to 96 is that they did a blackmail threat. I think it's that they did blackmail. I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd say you committed blackmail at the point of the threat. I think that's how blackmail from a legal standpoint works. But I am curious, like, what did they send it? I don't know. That's just for some reason, that's what my mind is interested in.
I don't know.
That's creepy.
You can ask an agent to read the article and answer that for you.
Actually,
you could just use a Gen AI model. Actually, you don't need an agent to do that.
Well, you see, now I really like how I have all my stuff compartmentalized. I've got some of my services over here, some of them over there. They're not really aware of each other. It's like, okay.
So as error rates continue to improve over the coming 6 to 24 months, as safety guardrails become more effective over that same kind of time period, we may get to a point where you can kind of have that master agent that you're using to be overseeing this kind of army of agents that you have working on your behalf. But
as long as he's good.
Well, yeah. And so, and there's all kinds of, I mean, every major AI provider is gunning for being the one that you trust to do that with. So you can now connect, I get pop-ups in Claude frequently about connecting my Google Drive, my Dropbox, my Slack, everything to them, which would allow them to, be able to handle things better for me, and start more effectively blackmail me, which is really what I'm looking for.
Here's another question I have. Was there actual infidelity in the synthetic data, or did it completely and totally manufacture it?
Yes, there was infidelity. Yes.
That's so interesting.
And so here's what's interesting. I also, in terms of the data themselves, my impression, my understanding of me reading this research report is not that all of the data, not that all of the emails are fabricated, but just that they anonymized personally identifiable information. So it seemingly found real emails that were actually being used by somebody having an affair. It's just that their name was anonymized.
Oh, that's so interesting. So it wasn't fully synthetic. It was just anonymized.
I don't think so.
Because you don't want it to be fully synthetic.
Exactly.
Because you don't have good fully synthetic data, because you can really only train good fully synthetic data off of good real anonymized data, right? It wouldn't make sense otherwise.
And actually, I think that because there were emails about an extramarital affair, if you kind of think about the kinds of things that if you prompted some Gen AI model to create a bunch of synthetic enterprise data, it's probably unlikely that it would be generating extramarital affair emails. Although maybe that's a standard.
After the Coldplay concert this past weekend, that's what got them.
Exactly. If you asked it to simulate emails at astronomy, then they're just all extramarital affairs.
All coming from HR. All right.
Yeah, exactly. From your HR head.
Let's talk about YCarrot a little bit. So companies, we want to make sure we get you some love and some promotion. So we'll start with, he's got the best data science podcast on the planet, highest ranked, best one, best people, best topics. This is the guy, everybody, Jon. And that's super data science podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Although it's interesting, we are in the beginning stages of a rebranding exercise because the show's been around for 9 years. 9 years ago when the show was founded, data science was being regarded as, sexiest job of the 21st century by Harvard Business Review, that kind of thing. And for 9 years, the show, well, especially for the first 4 or 5 years, a lot of what the show was about getting into a career in data science. But now we're basically an AI engineering show where all of, our guests are on talking about AI solutions. Like we don't have that many, like this is how you get into an entry-level data role kind of episode. We do still do some of those, but it's mostly an AI engineering podcast. And so we're trying to come up with something, some new brand. But yeah, for the foreseeable future, when this episode's come out, we'll still be the Super Data Science Podcast. We're not taking this lightly. And it is interesting because you also, you said there, we are the most listened to podcast in the data science industry. If we switch to being an AI podcast, well, then all of a sudden, does that mean we're competing against Lex Fridman? And then it's like, well, we're not the biggest then.
That's why I stuck with my CTO, CIO, VP of engineering world, because I'd rather just be the top one there than try to go out. Also, the sponsorships work vastly differently when you go out into that other world, and you like it doesn't make sense. They're like nothing about it. We've looked at this. We tried to do it like 3 different years in a row, and every single time it just doesn't make sense. Like we just are going to stay here and help tech leaders.
I think the nice thing for you and your name is that for the foreseeable future, we are still going to have CTOs in organizations. There's still going to be some of the most influential people in those organizations responsible for technology, and Modern is always keeping up with the times.
That's why I picked that name. Actually, that was intentional. I went with it because I was trying to come up with like an edgy name, and there was a bunch of different types of CTOs. But I realized it's like, okay, every 3 to 5 years, these things go in and out of style. You don't want to be the pragmatic CTO because that's popular right now because that book, and then that goes away after 2 years, and then it's the 2 pizza CTO. It's like whatever. So Modern, I said that worked. Now, when you get to the point, John, where you're like boiling it down to 2 or 3, I expect a text. I expect
sure.
Yeah, like hey, we're looking at these 2 or 3 names. Like which one? Because I'd love to help. I will answer that text.
For sure, yeah, but beyond the name, we do 104 episodes a year, just like you do, and we've had amazing guests, people like Andrew Ng, who's one of the biggest names, was on the show recently, and every episode, whether it's someone you've heard of or not, we are extremely, I'm sure, just like you, and you're talking about the email volume you get. We get over 100 inbound requests a month from people, and we are giving our listeners, the top. Because unlike you, we don't necessarily have a guest every episode. So like when I was talking about that anthropic agentic misalignment, that's just me doing a 10-minute episode on my own. But so we have like 4 to 6 guests a month. And so that's like the 4 to 6 best people from over 100 that agents and, marketing teams have been reaching out to us with. So, they're always great guests. We do a lot of research beforehand, just like you guys do. And, we don't laugh as much. I don't know if we laugh as much as you. You are a stand-up comedian. That's tough to compete with. But we have a fair bit of laughs for a technical show.
Nice. Yeah. I had a good set last night at Zany's in Nashville. So I'm feeling
nice.
I was up late, but like I'm feeling good today. I told my wife, I was like, it was worth it.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't talk about that much, by the way. There's only like 2 or 3 episodes maybe that I ever even mentioned anything. I'm still trying to get really good. So I'm 7 months in now, but I wanted to get to the point where like before I started saying like, hey, New York, like I'm here at this club tonight, or, trying to use the podcast to help drive people to come out. I was like, I need to get a year or 2 down the road of like really getting in there. And so far, I'm making a lot of progress. I'm so new, but I did a theater with like 400 people, wow. and it went really well. And so, yeah.
Nice. I can't wait to see what like the laughs per minute worked out to from Gemini.
I track them. I track them. My goal is I just went and analyzed like Nate Bargatze, John Chris, like some of the comedians I personally like. And, they're selling out stadiums and doing huge tours and stuff. And I tracked their laughs per minute. And I was like, okay, I need to hit that because that's what they are doing. I don't want the working comedian. I don't want the new comedian standard. I want the standard of the people who are living the dream. And then I have to figure out how to get there. So
nice. And so like how long is your tight set now? Like, can you do 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Yeah. So I'm at 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So, and that took a long time. I write every day and I've done 65 shows in the past 7 months.
Wow.
And
that's what it takes. Putting the reps in.
Yep. And I'd say I'm getting about 1 to 3 minutes per month. But that means I'm writing every single day. I'm going out 4 nights a week. I'm doing a bunch of, so by math, 95% of the stuff I write never even makes it like into my set.
And that's exactly the path to success. It's like, it's interesting how in a lot of pursuits, it's kind of like, exactly what you're describing, putting the reps in, monitoring your feedback, seeing how many laughs you get, doing 20 times more work than anybody ever sees. That is like, it's like a formula for success. And it's just, you just need to do it. But so few people stick to it. But somebody like you, who's been doing 104 podcast episodes a year after year, is exactly the right kind of person to crack it at anything, including stand-up comedy.
Oh, dude, I struggled for so many years giving up too soon. I would just switch the idea. I would do something. I'd get a year or two into it. Wasn't that exciting. I would switch it. And I wasn't getting results. And then I heard somebody say something about just sticking with it until you die and just making that decision. And so that's what I did with my podcast. And then from there, it took like 3 years for it to become full time. And it worked. And so now I'm like, okay, I can do anything, but I can't do everything. So where do we want to wrap up? We were plugging super data science.
Yeah. So I have something I'd love to.
Yeah.
There's one last framework for agentic AI that I wanted to squeeze in before anything else, just to make sure that your listeners get the most out of this episode. And it's something called Model Context Protocol, MCP. And so this is, so OpenAI Agents SDK, this is providing you with a free open source way to have an agent like your master, your orchestrator, aircraft control agent, be able to, do whatever tasks you want an agent to be able to do. OpenAI Agents SDK is for that. Crew AI allows you to then have a team of agents working on a task. The last thing is this MCP that's an important tool for you to have in your toolkit. So MCP allows your agent or crew of agents to have access to millions of tools. And so, for example, an example that Ed and I talk about in our Agentic AI Engineering YouTube workshop is you can, for example, Google Maps has an MCP GitHub page, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these MCP GitHub pages. And so MCP, Model Context Protocol, it's a protocol. You can think of it as like a software equivalent of a USB, where you have this USB-C connector that just plugs into like all of your devices. So MCP is the same kind of idea that allows your agents to access whatever kinds of tool capabilities you want it to have. So, for example, with the Google Maps MCP server, you can then have your agent be able to automatically convert an address into a latitude and longitude, or be able to find directions from one street address to another street address. So that's something, obviously, if you had to program that in an agent yourself, that would be hugely time consuming. But instead, that's just one example from millions of possible things, millions of possible tools that the Model Context Protocol, MCP, allows you to equip your agents with. And yeah, so it's super, super powerful.
It's an app store of capabilities for agents.
Exactly. And it allows you to still have, if you want to be in a situation where you have, strong guardrails, you can specify, okay, I have this crew of agents, and you can say, this member on the crew has access to these specific tools from these specific providers that I trust, and that kind of thing. So you can have kind of tight guardrails, or you could just see what happens and have your air traffic controller spin up whatever size crew with whatever capabilities and tools you want.
Wait, so I could say in crew, I can define that like this specific podcast production review person has access to like this Dropbox folder, but the other agents don't?
I'm pretty sure that you can have that level of specificity.
Yeah, I know you guys, that's depending on the Dropbox API and MCP and all that stuff for right now. But in general, you can say this member of the crew has access to Google Drive.
Exactly. And then, like a general kind of guardrail, like a good kind of safety idea that you could have for yourself as an individual or an organization is to have, limit what individual agents have access to, and then also have somebody reviewing what they're doing. So like a security patrol agent that is tracking and making sure that that agents aren't getting up to tricky things.
That's our next startup, John.
Exactly. And then, yeah, yeah, exactly. And then you could end up in situations where, you have agents blackmailing other agents. Hey, I saw what you were doing on that.
FBI, CIA. It's been happening for years. Every country does it to each other.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's, I just wanted to make sure that your listeners got all that in, all these kind of open source things that people could be using. That's the modern toolkit for people spinning up agents, for enterprises, for individuals, whatever. I'm looking forward to hearing what you do next, Joel. You're right. You're doing all the right things from what I can hear with your own processes. Kind of the right level of trust and control.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We're just experimenting, playing with it, and learning. And it's so amazing how there are so many companies that are so far behind on this, and it's just like the opportunity. I told my wife, if whatever happens, something happens with, deep fakes and my revenue from here goes to zero, I go, me being a consultant, I could spend the rest of my career helping companies transition into these new technologies.
Joel, absolutely you can. I mean, that is, so our experience with YCarrot, and, granted but just like you, I'm in this, this helpful position after all these years of growing this podcast and, my books and the speaking that I do. But basically I have this platform that has made it very easy to say, so I basically, just when I'm speaking at conferences, I'll mention YCarrot, if people want to, or when I'm on a podcast like this, mention YCarrot. And the amount of inbound flow is so crazy. And basically every conversation leads to next steps. There's so much traction and positive conversations that if I sense that there's any kind of hesitation, I just don't follow up because I have so many hot leads that do immediately want to follow up,
Thank you so much for listening. And if you found this episode useful, please share it with a friend or a colleague who you think would get value from it. And if you have topics that you would like to hear discussed on the podcast, either add me on LinkedIn or send me an email, joel@moderncto.io. Every time I get an email or LinkedIn message, it absolutely makes my day and inspires me to keep going.